podium to my right. I'm Mark Sorrell, and I'll be acting as moderator tonight. In my other life, I'm the moderator for the town of Medway, and it's a pleasure to see as many folks here tonight as we have, significantly more than we actually produce for a town meeting. So thank you. It's good to see people participating.
Obviously, that's how you get elected as moderator. Fewer people.
The questioning tonight will be conducted by my colleagues to my right, and I'll introduce them. Immediately to my right is Steve Sherlock, who's active in Franklin affairs and is known for the Franklin Matters online newspaper. Next to him is Attorney Robert Crowley LeBlanc, active in state Democratic Committee matters. And at my extreme right is John Marcus from Dean College. And the candidates have agreed on the format, and so without further ado, I understand that Mr. Padula will make the initial remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Peter Padula, and I'm running for the position of the State Representative for the 10th Norfolk District. I want to introduce a few people. I'm going to introduce my wife. Lori, can you please stand up, honey? This is my wife, my best friend, my biggest supporter, my Abigail Adams. Thank you, honey. I want to say thank you to my committee. We have to move this back a little bit, I think. For all their hard work, because as this thing goes on, it just gets busier and busier and busier, and everyone just seems to step up to the plate. It's been fantastic. I want to thank Jim Valley. I sent him a photo, actually, 2 weeks ago, because we tell him it's going to be hard filling your shoes. I think that's an easy comment to make, but I was down in Fall River in court, and I went across the street, and I saw this big chair, so I took a picture of it standing in front of it, and I said, Jimmy, I know it's going to be hard filling your shoes, but it's going to be really hard filling your seat as well, and I sent him the picture to let him know that that's where we're at. Let me tell you a little bit about me. I'm 52 years old. I'm a lifelong Franklin resident. I'm a 1977 graduate from Franklin High School. I graduated from North Adams State College like Mr. Marcus did as well. I graduated from Southern New England School of Law. My background. I'm a private practicing attorney in Franklin. I have been for 22 years. My insurance agency's been in Franklin for 28 years, so I've combined 50 years of experience in the community. I'm a former special assistant district attorney for 3 years. I did that in Middlesex County for Jerry Leone. It was a great experience. I sat on the Franklin Charter Commission. So on that commission, we got to look at the form of government. We rewrote the town's charter. We looked at issues such as elected versus appointed. So I got to really learn about how government works. I was on the transition team for Michael Morrissey, and that involved interviewing all the people that work for our office, or most of the people who work for our office, and more particularly the people that actually prosecute cases and the administrators that work over in Rentham District Court, which services Franklin and Medway. I coached in Franklin for 13 years, and I've been a member of the Norfolk County Advisory Board. As I mentioned, the Norfolk County Advisory Board, I served in a number of capacities, clerk, chairman of the Finance Committee, and that board is a regional board, and on that board I learned a number of things. I learned problems other towns have with their town administrators, with their superintendents of schools, with their police chiefs, what they had for issues, OPEB, collective bargaining, what they had for issues, and how they resolved those issues. So it was a great experience for me. I'm here to ask for your vote and your support to be our next state representative for the 10th Norfolk District for Franklin and Medway. Thank you.
Mr. Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Sorrell, and first of all, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, a summer night in August. I'm sure you had better things to do, but this is a very important election for the community of Medway and the community of Franklin, and I thank you for spending your time with us here tonight. I want to thank my wife, Maureen, and my children, Alicia, Jeffrey, Natalie. This campaign certainly has been an endurance run, and you guys are truly helping me out being there and sure I haven't been the best father and the best husband over the last few weeks. I think they remind me of that frequently, but we're almost there, 16 days to go. I'm running for this office because I'm committed to public service. And public service is a way of paying back. When I was a kid, I had a poster on my wall of John F. Kennedy's inaugural address. And that particular line, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." It was right up there next to my Bobby Orr poster. And public service is a way of paying back and living up to that commitment. And it's part of that notion that to those whom much has been given, much is expected. And my family and my friends have benefited from public programs, a public education, student loans, Social Security, Medicare, public safety, roads, etc. And those services and those government services helped us to help ourselves. And it's our generational responsibility to see that these things are available for the next generation that comes along. We need for the 10th Norfolk District an experienced leader, somebody who can protect local aid to the communities, finish in Medway what was started on that Route 109 project, assist you in Medway and Franklin with the Charles River pollution control problems, work closely with your town officials, and control unfunded mandates. And I'm here to tell you tonight that I am that candidate. I'll tell you a little bit about my background. My wife and I have raised 3 children, all educated in the public school system. I've spent the last 26 years working as a lawyer, obtaining justice for working men and women. For the last 14 years, I've had the honor and privilege of working in Franklin town government. I served 10 years on the school committee, 9 of those 10 years as the chairman of the school committee. In 2010, our school system was touted as a spotlight district in the United States. We were rated as highly efficient on all 3 of the productivity metrics covered by that study. 3 years earlier, our community was rated as one of the top 10 places to raise a family in the United States, and our educational system was noted to be way above average. We introduced innovative programs in that school system. We were committed to high performance, efficiency, innovation, transparency, and accessibility. Now I serve on Franklin's Town Council, taking on issues such as public safety, roads, elder services, facilities, and other issues that make our community great. I'm currently the chairman of the Master Plan Committee, looking at the future for our community. In each of these areas and in each of these jobs, I have been tested. I've been called upon in each of those jobs to make very difficult decisions and arose to the challenge on each of those occasions. I've worked on complicated fiscal matters for over 14 years in my service to my community. I've worked on town budgets, school budgets, building committee budgets. I plan to bring that experience, those qualifications, and that commitment with me to Beacon Hill. But in order to do that, I need your help and I need your vote to do so. I'm looking forward tonight to engaging in a spirited debate, answering the questions that are put here before you, and spending the next 16 days continuing to go out to meet with the voters in the district and tell you why I should be the next representative for the 10th Norfolk District, and I appreciate your attention tonight. Thank you so much.
Let the questioning begin.
I think I won the honor of going first. So thank you for the opportunity to have prepared the questions, and we look forward to the answers from the gentleman tonight so we can all make an informed vote come September 6th. So gentlemen, what have you done or are planning to do to prepare specifically to serve Medway in the legislature?
Well, Steve, to begin with, I've been walking door to door in both Franklin and Medway, talking to voters, getting a sense of what's on their mind, and asking them, what is it that you want from your next state representative? That's probably the most important thing that we can do in this race. I spent a considerable amount of time meeting with local officials. I've met with the town administrator here in Medway. I've met with the school superintendent here in Medway. I've met with Board of Selectmen here in Medway and other town officials, asking them what is it that they want out of the next state representative. I've attended a number of events, and I've been everywhere. My day starts at around 6:30 in the morning, and it ends around 11 p.m. I've been studying the issues that are important to this community, and we've identified that the Route 109 project is probably the most important thing for the town of Medway. Project has been on the horizon for 15 to 20 years. This community wants that project complete. You're going to need a state representative who will go into Beacon Hill, hit the ground running, and see to it that that project is completed on time.
10 seconds.
And the other central issue is the Charles River Pollution Control District. The communities of Franklin and Medway are going to be hit with an increased assessment and also a capital funding project. So that's another issue that's important. I've been studying those issues, and those are the things that are important to this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. In campaigning, I've been around, we started about 4 months ago knocking on doors, meeting people in Medway and Franklin. And I've been getting around meeting with individual community leaders, setting up meetings, meeting with Board of Selectmen. And I want to tell you, the people I've met, very, very bright, very engaged, and they care about the community. It's very impressive. And in going door to door and talking to these people, I learned from people what's important to them. They tell me what's important to them. So we learn and take all these issues back, talk to the town leaders, and see what's the appropriate way to handle these things going forward. One of the issues I think that's important specific to Medway is the new Community Preservation Act, which allows the states to have matching funds for some of the recreational facilities. Now, it will be up to the community and the town meeting to make a decision what they want to do with respect to these issues or the funds themselves. But if in fact that comes to fruition, then know that I will follow as a state representative, your state representative, to make sure that the funds come through for this community and any community that's dealing with those issues to make sure they get these fields or these recreational facilities in place. Thank you.
Next question.
If you're elected to the Democratic primary on Thursday, the 6th of September, and then when you beat the Republican nominee, and you first in orientation asked which two committees, and you're going to have two committees to choose from, which two committees in the House of Representatives do you wish to serve on, and why?
I would like to join the Judiciary Committee. Being a lawyer, I'd like to sit on the Judiciary Committee so that we'd have input in the people that actually we get to practice in front of and have input in putting people in place that actually rule on laws and issues. The other committee I would like to sit on is the Ways and Means Committee, which deals with the financials issues of the state. That committee gets involved in all the fiscal matters that deal with all the issues regarding the state. And that's the two committees that I would like to serve on. And I think that's where I could make the biggest impact and have the most positive effect on the state. Thank you.
Mr. Roy?
I would ask to be served, first of all, on the Education Committee. Public education is one of my passions. My own public education made a big difference in my life, and I know that it provided me with opportunities to improve my life and improve the lives of my children. And I'd like to continue that work serving on the Education Committee. And I think my background of 10 years experience with the school committee will uniquely qualify me for a position on that committee. Secondly, as an attorney, I would like to sit on the Judiciary Committee. I think I can bring 26 years experience as a trial lawyer in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, having served and from the district court to the superior court to the federal court level, I think I can bring a unique expertise to that particular area. So that's how I would like to serve if I'm given the opportunity on Beacon Hill.
Mr. Marcus?
Social media plays a very large role in our world today. How have you used social media as part of your campaign, and how will you use it if you're elected?
Well, I can tell you from day one on this campaign, we had a website up and running, and that website has been continuously updated throughout this campaign. We will continue to update that website throughout the duration of my service on Beacon Hill and until the last day that I serve in office. We also have a very active Facebook page, both a personal page for myself and a Facebook page for the campaign. That gets updated several times per day. It gets frequent visitors. I was told as recently as the other day, we've had approximately 60,000 visits to our webpage since this campaign began. Obviously, there's interest in what's going on in this campaign, and it's nice to see that we have the mediums out there to take advantage of to get the word out to folks. We're putting videos up on these pages, photographs up on these pages, documents up on these pages, any information to get the word out about what we're doing and how we want to proceed if elected. We also have Twitter that we use. We use email actively. And I said at the last debate that we were going to go do some Google Hangouts. Well, we've done 2 Google Hangouts already. We've done one with a youth group of 18 to 25-year-olds, and we did one with some older folks. They didn't get the technology as well as the youth did, but they're great tools to answer questions, and we're going to continue to do that throughout this campaign. Thank you.
Mr. Padula?
Well, Jeff, of those 60,000 hits, I think 50,000 of those hits were us checking on your campaign. So I wanted to be fair about that.
I hope you learned something.
I did. About the 49,000th time we did. You know, we're using social media too. You'll see us. We're getting, I mentioned in the last debate we should hire Jeffrey to do it for us because he's pretty big on the social media piece, and we're doing it. We're actually, we've got our Facebook up. We're doing videos. We've been doing photos. You'll see our Facebook becoming more and more active. I think it's important. It's another avenue to have people stay in touch with you. But I will tell you this, nothing beats me coming and knocking at your door, which is what we've been doing. Nothing beats me calling you and talking to you. And nothing beats you calling me when you need to reach me. I am available. I think social media is great. All I know is, I don't know about Jeffrey, but I get so many emails sometimes, I have a tendency not to look at them. But while there is a need for this piece, where there is a need for this piece of having the social media, I think that nothing beats the actually getting out, knocking on the doors and talking to people is what we're doing. Okay? Thank you.
Back to Mr. Sherlock.
Picking up on the theme that we just started there, I think, in terms of the interaction between social media and personal interaction, based on the activities that you've been making going door to door, what's the one thing that going door to door does for your campaign?
I think it's Mr. Padula's turn to start first.
Going door to door allows us to connect to people. One of the things that I did not expect when we started this race was the takeaway I get from going door to door and talking to people. They tell you issues that are important to them. They tell you things about their personal life. They tell you things to let you know that we're all in this together. You know, I learned at a very early age, I'm no better than you and you're no better than I. And it's important that when I talk to these people that they tell me what's going on, what's important in their life. We have an idea, we talk about all these issues, you know, a lot of things, the Democratic Party does it as well, and sometimes I think we get at least a little bit carried away. These are our points, and this is what we're going for. You know what? You know what's important? Bringing money to our community, making sure our budgets are balanced, making sure that we have strong in police and fire. We can tell you about all these issues until we're blue in the face. Those are the things that are important to people. The older people, as you talk to them, and this is another takeaway I didn't expect, ambulance service. What's important to my uncles as they get older and will be important to me is making sure that when I call that number, the ambulance comes to my house and gets there. because I have ambulances. Like in Franklin, when we built a brand-new fire station, and it was taken out of service for a period of time. Those things are important to people. They talk to me. They call us. I get people calling. I was at the senior center, and I was talking to one of the seniors, and he said, why should my taxes go up? Why should my taxes go up and when I'm a fixed income? And you know what? I said, I don't know the exact answer to that question. I'll find out. I'll get back to you on what we need to do in order to try to make this work for you. Because sometimes there is no easy answer. And I will tell you this, if I'm your state representative, you're going to get a straight answer as to what's going on. And it may be that sometimes, unfortunately, taxes do need to rise, or other sources of revenue need to be
Time's up.
found. Okay? Thank you.
Mr. Roy?
Well, I think the one thing we've just learned is that if we're over 25, we're out of the social media group, I guess. But the,
Wait a minute, did you get a chance?
I haven't gotten a chance to answer my question.
oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were called.
There's too many lawyers here.
Too many lawyers. Too many cooks in the broth.
All I can tell you is going door to door has been the most rewarding experience I've had on this campaign. At first, I have to admit, I was a little bit leery. I was wondering who's going to want to see a total stranger come up to their door and talk to them about an issue that makes them uncomfortable, politics. It's something you don't want to bring up at the Thanksgiving Day table or the Christmas table. It's something you don't bring up around your family. But you know something? It's very different. The folks in the community and the conversations that I've had going door to door really honed in for me the importance of this election and really affirmed for me that getting into this race was probably the best thing I could have done. Bobby Horowitz, who's sitting right here in the second row, is someone who I've met through the Alliance. We meet on the first Monday of every month, and she talks constantly about the importance of going door to door and having that community conversation with your neighbors. And as I got to listen and hear her approach to how to do it, I really learned a very good lesson. And speaking to people about what's important to them, they understand, they feel, and they want to be a part of this process. And the people that are most comforting are those who say, I've never seen a politician come to my door and ask me questions. That's rewarding. I'm glad this campaign has brought us both out there, and we're going to continue to do that after this campaign is over. Thank you.
Mr. LeBlanc, now it's your turn.
Now it's my turn. I just got an email. Yeah. You know, you mentioned the fact that you built a new fire station, and I think the town council and town administrator had something to do that with the voters. And then you wound up with a situation where you couldn't fund the firefighters to man the fire station. Now, that's a function of the fact that we have had a freeze on local aid, except for Chapter 70 local aid, since 2009. Two-part question: how are you going to advocate to bring an allocation of the state income tax to local aid to fully fund, without raising property taxes, things like police and fire? And secondly, how are you going to make sure that you work not to increase property taxes on those who are on fixed incomes?
Mr. Roy.
Well, I think one of the things that is important, and there's some discussion about revising the Chapter 70 education formula. I think one of the most important things that we can do for our communities is to maintain that level of Chapter 70 aid and increase that Chapter 70 aid. For those of you who may not be familiar with Chapter 70, that is the education money. And I know in Franklin, approximately 52% of the school budget is Chapter 70 dollars, $28 million that comes from the state to fund education. We need to keep those levels of education funding coming. How are we going to do that? Well, we have to make sure that we meet the adequate level of spending. and that we have an equitable division of those funds throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and each of the communities. It's an issue that needs to be studied, it's an issue that needs to be reviewed, and we have to look at how we fund education, because if in most communities it's approximately a 60-40 split between education funding and town funding, and to the extent that the education funding takes up the resources of the community, then we run into the troubles with police, fire, roads, and other aspects. So we're going to have to review the Chapter 70 formula, make sure that the state makes good on its commitment to fund education, and I think that's going to give relief to the taxpayers from their property tax dollars.
Mr. Padula?
It's a pretty big question to ask, and I don't think we got to the second part of it, but let me try to answer the first part of it. Chapter 70 funding. There's been a lot of discussions about amending this Chapter 70 funding formula, and from my investigation and talking to people in legislatures about this, there's probably a handful of people in the state that even understand what that formula is all about. It was established so long ago that the economic times were different. But what we need to do with respect to Chapter 70 funding is, and we do very well, Valley has put us in a tough spot because he gets a ton of money for us, Chapter 70 and Chapter 90 funding. We need to maintain at least the same level. We've done great with it. Our budget is balanced because of these numbers that we bring in. So we need to continue to maintain those monies coming in at the same level. So I'll tell you, I said this at the last debate, we are freshman legislators, okay? We won't have the juice when we get out of the block. However, we can start reaching out now, as I think I have, and Jeff has probably done as well, to start making contacts with people and start ensuring up some of the support so we can make sure that these funds keep coming forward. Thank you.
Mr. Marcus?
When you look at the overall state budget, what would your 3 top priorities be?
Mr. Padula?
Three priorities for the state budget: making sure that the money is spent in such a fashion that we're getting the maximum value for our tax dollars. Making sure that our budget, or as we put our budget together and as we vote on things, that we do things, we vote on issues, and our budget helps to promote jobs and the economy. Making sure that our budget deals with the healthcare issues. Our healthcare, we've got a good start with it now, but there's a lot to be desired. The new legislation that just went into effect is just starting to kick in. So what we need to do with respect to those issues is keep up the hard work, stay focused, and make sure that we keep follow through on all the work that we've put into place so far. Thank you.
Mr. Roy?
My 3 priorities, not necessarily in this order, would be education funding. I think Massachusetts is one of the few states in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that has a right to an education built into the Massachusetts Constitution. We need to ensure that we are fulfilling that obligation to our students. And one way to do that is to make sure that the state aid makes it to our local communities, and that gets us back to the Chapter 70 question. The other area that's important for state budgeting is reining in increasing health care costs. I think that one of the things that affects the Chapter 70 formula is that there's health insurance costs increase on an annual basis and chew into school and town budgets annually. We need to bring those costs under control. I'm happy that the legislature passed a bill a few weeks ago to address those running health care costs, but that's something we have to continue working on. Creating jobs and the innovation bill that was passed by the legislature a few weeks ago is the way to get jobs and the economy back on track. We've got to rebuild the infrastructure in this Commonwealth, get the roads and bridges back on track so that we can transport our people and our goods and our services along these roads. I think clean energy and reducing our dependence on foreign oil are areas that we ought to concentrate on. And finally, maintain our human services industries in Massachusetts. Thank you.
Back to Mr. Sherlock. And this would be to Jeff Roy to answer in the first instance.
Thank you. So Medway and Franklin, like most other Mass communities, are faced with the OPEB or other post-employment benefit requirements that are currently in varying states of underfunding. What is your position on what the legislature can do to help out this local issue?
Well, I think the legislature certainly can help out greatly by leading and providing an example to the local communities as to how best to handle this problem. I think we need to modernize and further reform the state's pension systems so that we can address this concern. I know that there are bills out there that talk about raising the retirement ages, eliminating early retirement subsidies, figuring out a better formula for calculating the pensions, preventing abusive practices. I think we read in the paper constantly about abusive practices that enhance benefits at the expense of all the taxpayers in the Commonwealth. We need to prevent double dipping. We need to form a dedicated OPEB funding account. Many towns have set up and established trust funds to address that concern. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts needs to do the same. And because one of the largest components of the OPEB is health insurance, I'm going to go back to that initial question, or the prior question, where we need to address rising health care costs, because that's something that raises a problem in the OPEB. And I think with these plans in place, we can help the communities solve their problem, but we have to lead by example. Thank you.
Mr. Padula.
I've had the experience of dealing at the county level with OPEB. It's my understanding now, after going through this process and learning more of the issues, that not only do we have it on the town levels, we have it on the county level, we have it on the state level. Some communities, like Franklin, have set up small sinking funds to deal with these issues. The simple way to resolve this issue is to get the state to start kicking in some money to set up these accounts with regard to OPEB. What's happening is this system is designed to fail. It's a pay-as-you-go system. So what happens, for example, is if a town employee was working and they got benefits and they passed and their spouse survived, well, when this formula was designed, it was designed in such a fashion that they expected the people would be living to 75. What's happened is husband or wife now is living to 95. So what we have to do is it's a pay-as-you-go system. So it's designed to fail. And talking to some of the folks in the local communities and the town government, they said what we need to do is probably consider starting to set up a separate tier system so that, for the people that are in now in their early 50s, let them know that there's going to be some time constraints put in so we can phase in a way to deal with this OPEB. That needs to be put into place now, but the most important thing in addition to that is getting some funding from the state to get these funds up and going and have the towns and the communities make sure that they understand what their responsibilities are. Thank you.
And Attorney LeBlanc, we're back to you.
At the end of the legislative session, there was an argument or a debate going on between the governor and the legislature. The legislature wanted to tighten up EBT or welfare cards to restrict what those cards could be used for. In other words, they wanted to not allow people who are on welfare to use the taxpayer card to buy liquor, not to be able to have buy tattoos, not be able to use cigarette products which adversely affect their health and rise the cost of health care that all the rest of us have to pay for, and half a dozen other items. It was just a small start, and the legislature pushed it and the governor vetoed it. If you had sat in the legislature at that time, would you have voted with the governor to liberalize the use of welfare cards for anything us taxpayers might use them for? Or would you have voted with the legislature to override that veto?
Mr. Padula.
I think that's a simple answer. There's no way that these funds should be used to put on tattoos or to buy lottery tickets or cigarettes. This money is to help people, to give them a leg up. The Democratic Party, we help people. We want to give people a leg up. But you know what? We don't want to enable them. So there's no question in my mind I would have voted with the legislature. So there are a number of issues I respectfully disagree with the governor on. And just because he's the governor doesn't mean I'm going to agree with him. But common sense. Do you think it's okay, Frank, that people should be able to go down and get a tattoo with their card? When I have friends of mine, I'm holding signs on the weekend, I have a buddy of mine that's working 3 jobs to put his kid through state school like I graduated and John graduated from North Adams State College. 3 jobs. But there's people with these cards getting cigarettes and tattoos. You know, there's no way you can explain to me that that's, or give me a reason as to why that's the right way to do it. It's just simply wrong. And the short answer is, I would have voted against it. I would have voted with the legislature and against the governor. Thank you.
That's the shortest answer you'll ever get out of a lawyer.
Yes, it is.
Mr. Roy?
He's picking on lawyers an awful lot tonight.
Look at it, there's 1, 2, right there on the middle table. I would have voted with the legislature on that bill. I understand the governor's concern, and I understand the governor was concerned that we did not have a way to track these expenses as to how these EBT cards were used. We didn't have a mechanism in place to reject the sale of a particular item if it was being purchased with an EBT card. I have to say, like everybody in this room, I am opposed to waste, fraud, and abuse, and that includes the use of EBT cards. But on the other hand, I don't know many people who have EBT cards that want to be using these cards. This is something that they go because they're in need, and they use these cards because they're in need. And we have to respect the fact that they're looking for a way to come out from a hole. And that's what these cards are there for. I don't think we should pick on people. I don't think we should discriminate against them in any way. I agree they should not be using these cards for other than necessaries of life, and I don't think I would ever support using an EBT card to get a tattoo. So I would have clearly voted with the legislature, but I do understand what the governor was trying to do, and I do truly hope that we will not castigate a group of individuals who are in need. Thank you.
We're back to Mr. Marcus.
Could you talk about any relationships that you have with folks at the State House or in the legislature that will help you to deliver on what you've been promising to the residents of the district?
Mr. Roy?
Well, through my work as the chairman of the Franklin Democratic Town Committee and as a longtime member of that committee, I certainly have been exposed to a number of people in the State House and in and around the State House. Early on in this campaign, I sat down with Representative John Fernandez, who will represent Precinct 1 here in Medway. We had a nice chat about how we would work together in the legislature to fulfill the needs of the town of Medway, and I would look forward to working with him. We both happen to grow up in the town of Milford, so we're very familiar with one another. Karen Spilker is a state senator representing this area. I have a very good relationship with Karen, have worked with her over the years as a member of the school committee and of the town council. I certainly will go back to her. Representative Carolyn Dykema, who represented this area, I've met her on several occasions and do plan to call on her for assistance. Certainly going to call on Jim Valley to introduce me to some of the players in the State House and around there. I've been endorsed by a number of groups that have offices around the State House. These include the Massachusetts Division of the National Organization of Women, the Sierra Club, the National Association of Social Workers. They've all offered to assist me and introduce me and help and guide me through the State House. I know a number of other reps and senators throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I will call on them for assistance too. This job is about building relationships, and I've got a head start on that. Thank you.
Mr. Padula?
Thank you. You know, I've been fortunate to build many positive relationships throughout my career in government as a special assistant district attorney under Jerry Leone, my law practice for 22 years, and my insurance practice for 28 years, and sitting on various boards. As a special assistant district attorney working for the state, we get to interact with a lot of people on a lot of levels and help people deal with some very tough issues. But, you know, I said this at the last debate, don't make any mistake about this. We're going to be a freshman legislator, you know. And one of the things that I was told not to do is name drop. Through this whole process, we've been reaching out to people. I have, the people in the State House, talking to different people. these people, I have met some brilliant people whose heart's in the right place, and they know and they teach you a lot about what's going on in government. Nevertheless, my record as a problem solver and someone that can constructively work with people precedes itself. And I'll tell you this, one thing I'll do from day one is make sure that I'll be the proper voice for the people of Franklin and Medway on Beacon Hill. Thank you.
All right, our next question, I believe we're back to Mr. Sherlock.
If elected, what changes would you propose to help commuters from Franklin and Medway afford to get into? Let me start that over again since we probably lost our train of thought.
That was Republicans.
If elected, what changes would you propose to help commuters from Franklin and Medway afford to get into, or better afford to get into Boston for work?
The question goes first to Mr. Padula.
You know, commuter rail access is very important to us here in Franklin and Medway. We have a lot of our people from the community that take advantage of it. We have to make sure that the frequency, reliability, and affordability stay in place, because that service is essential. And it's not even essential, it's essential to the economic vitality of our towns. You know, it's important for the legislature to do a couple things with regard to MBTA funding to keep it on a sustainable basis. Number one, we have to make sure that the funding, there's adequate funding for capital maintenance improvement of the system. Number two, we have to make sure that the addressing the problem of legacy costs that are associated with the MBTA. And number three, we have to get the cost of the big dig out of the MBTA budget. That's a huge problem that we have. We do those things, and we're going to be in good shape keeping the funding in place, reasonable for our people here in the community. Thank you.
Mr. Roy?
I think to make it more affordable, we need to encourage people to use the rails. I think as a Commonwealth, we all benefit from more people taking the commuter rail into the city of Boston. It's a great ride. I've been taking that ride for 28 years every day, although not the past couple of weeks. I have not been going into Boston every day, but it's a great way to commute. It's less stress on the roads, less emissions in our air, less use of gasoline, and less congestion on the roads. So we should be doing everything in our power to encourage people to use the rails. I'm afraid that what we're doing with the costs associated with the commuter rail is we're discouraging the use of the rails. A monthly pass to get from Franklin to Boston is $275. To park in a space at the train lot is $40. So that's $315 a month that we charge people to do something that we want people to do. In order to encourage people to use the rails, we ought to decrease the amount of parking. We should offer free parking to encourage people to go there. We should do a better job of collecting fares. We should increase ridership, because the more people who are paying a monthly fare to ride that train, the more revenue we're going to have. So those are the things. I would also make it easier for people to ride a bicycle to the train station. Let's get some bike lockers there. There are a lot of innovative approaches that we could use to increase ridership, and that's the direction we need to go for a better Commonwealth.
And we're back to Mr. LeBlanc.
Another area of disagreement between the legislature and the governor is the treatment of illegal immigrants in the Commonwealth. The governor's position is that illegal immigrants ought to be treated like everyone else, citizens and not. And in terms of benefits, tuition breaks, welfare benefits, and all the rest, what would your position be on that issue, for or against?
Mr. Roy, to you first.
Well, the first thing I would say is I don't want to do anything that would encourage illegal activity in the United States. The question about tuition tax breaks and charging in-state tuition for children of undocumented aliens has been a question that I've faced probably several times along this campaign. And there's a bill currently before the legislature to offer in-state tuition rates to these children. and have been asked how I would treat that. And I said, I'm opposed to the legislation in the form that it currently exists. I do want to do everything in my power to encourage these children to become United States citizens, and I want to encourage them to be educated here. But to simply offer them a tuition tax break without anything in return, I think is a disservice to both us and these children. So I've suggested an amendment to that legislation that would go like this. We would provide you, as a student, with a loan for the difference from in-state tuition to the regular tuition. You would get that as a loan. If you worked towards citizenship and you got your citizenship within 10 years, we'd forgive that loan. Should you fail to get your citizenship within 10 years, that's going to become a debt that's not dischargeable in bankruptcy, and you will owe that back. I think that's the fair way to treat that issue, and that's how I'd address it if I were a member of the legislature. Thank you.
Mr. Padula?
I guess it might be one of the times I respectfully disagree with my brother. I think that the bill needs to be analyzed. I think that with regard to immigrants, if it's taken on a whole, for the people that I've talked to, I haven't talked to too many people who are in favor of giving illegal immigrants educational breaks. I think that it needs to go back to the legislature. I think it needs more study. And I understand what the governor's trying to do, but sometimes I think what happens is we try to be politically correct, as my brother at the table will sometimes tell you. That's what happens. And I think that while it may be popular in some circles, the people I'm talking to, it's not that popular with. So I can't really stand here and propose a way to make this thing good. I can't put lipstick on this one because I don't think, from the people I've talked to, that they'd be happy with it. Having said that, I'd be certainly willing to listen to any proposed legislation that they have and try to come up with something and come back to the people in my community and say, this is what the governor's proposing. Do you think it makes sense to you? Because one of the things that we need to do on the Hill is listen to the people in the community. You're the ones who are going to tell me what I need to do, Joe, Jack. You're going to tell me what's appropriate. You're going to tell me why you think we should give these breaks to these people. I'll go back to my buddy working 3 jobs and putting his kids through UMass, Amherst. So why is it that they catch this break? So I need to hear from you as to why it's appropriate to put these monies forward, because from what I'm hearing in the community, there's no reason to do it, or they don't want it to happen. Thank you.
Mr. Marks? Mr. Marcus?
A year ago this week, we were all preparing for the hurricane that turned into a tropical storm, and we all saw what damage it did, particularly relating to utilities. So what's your position on the governance of utilities, their service rates, and particularly their performance?
Mr. Padula?
Public utilities are legal monopolies, and that's the best way to provide the services is through these monopolies. But what happens is our government has a key role in making sure that the price and the service are right. Now, we all saw what happened here recently with this storm. And what happened was they were cutting corners on dealing with emergency issues and trying to get services to us. That's something that can't be tolerated. Our local town governments are trying to deal with it, but it's going to be something that's going to need to be dealt with on the state level. The Department of Public Utilities also has a role in this, and what we need to do is make sure that we locally, as a state government and local governments, all put our heads together and make sure we hold their feet to the fire and make sure that the price and the service are kept in line to make sure we get price and service kept in line to make sure that we get the proper service going forward. Thank you.
This utility situation is something that we actually have addressed on the local level. At the town council in Franklin, this issue of power outages in our community is something that we were frustrated with. We called National Grid to task. We brought them before the town council, asked them to produce a report of what they were doing to address the concerns of our community. They came back with a report that was far less than adequate, and I'm being nice in describing it that way. We didn't let them off the hook. We went after them again, and if any of you see these orange trucks driving around our community, you can see that they did respond to our complaints and our constant pressure about what they're doing. As we're holding signs every morning at 7 o'clock, we see fleets of orange trucks coming by, and they're coming in to work on the problems. We have trees overhanging wires. That's a result of negligence and not tending to these trees over the years. They're finally addressing those. We have problems with animals getting onto the wires. We had a problem with our last debate that we lost power on a beautiful day because the infrastructure that exists in our community is poor. We need to maintain pressure on these utilities, and I can assure you that we've already begun here at the local level, and if I get to Beacon Hill, I'm not going to let up until they address this problem and cure the power outages that we should not be facing. We're not living in the Stone Age. Thank you.
Mr. Sherlock?
Changing the topic slightly to mass higher education costs, is there anything you would propose to help more students afford mass state higher education?
And back to Mr. Roy.
Education, I can say, is certainly my passion, and we need to do whatever it is to make sure that education is affordable, both K-12 and higher education. As one thing I've seen as a parent sending my children to college, college costs are spiraling out of control. And quite frankly, I don't understand what's driving these costs up. I think one of the first things that we need to do is to conduct a study, develop a task force that's going to go out there and look at what's driving college costs up. To some extent, it's market-driven. And I know a lot of parents are out there, they need to get their kids into the best schools, and they're willing to pay any price, any dollar, to get their kids into the right schools. They're willing to pay college coaches $5,000 to help their kid get into a good school. And to the extent that the schools are taking advantage of parents, we need to rein that under control. We need to fund our state college system to the point where we make it attractive, we make it competitive to some of these private universities. And I think we can rein in costs by conducting a task force that'll look at what's driving them. Some of the exorbitant salaries that we're paying some professors, I think we can bring those down. These exorbitant salaries we're paying university presidents can be brought down. And those are the things that I would look at to bring it under control. Thank you.
Mr. Padula?
As a graduate of North Adams State College, I bear personal witness to the public higher education system and taking advantage of that. We need to try to keep costs for education within line for people. It is absolutely through the roof. You know, and I think that the state should provide some funding. I have to agree with my brother regarding the state college system. You know, my son got accepted to a few schools, and one was the UMass Eisenberg Business School. He took the heat off of us when he got accepted to that program, because here's a school that people have a very difficult time getting into because he's academically, thank God he's smart like Mom, he was able to get into this institution, so it took the heat off of us. He picked another school, but because that was in place, it worked out well for us. We need to look at the cost of bureaucracy, what the administrators are getting paid, make sure we review that, make sure they're spending the money wisely, because the money that goes to higher education needs to go to the kids, not so much to the administration and to the faculty, or the administration of the school. Faculty needs to be funded properly, but we need to make sure they're doing their job right and spending their money wisely. Thank you.
And we're back to Mr. LeBlanc for questions.
What approach would either of you take to developing a policy of reduction of the dependency on property taxes to support local government?
Mr. Padula?
Reduction of property taxes. You know, there's obviously, we have to look at other sources of revenue right now, but if there was a way, I like these loaded questions, it's like the ones my law school professor asked, you know. If there was a way that my brother knew how to do this, we'd probably be doing it by now. Because right now, the bulk of our money comes in from local property taxes. Sometimes you might have some of these pay-as-you-go systems or systems for specific items, but right now, unless we can put all our heads together and figure out another way to fund this, local property taxes is where the money's coming from. We should always be willing to look for alternative sources of revenue. But right now, I don't see any other sources of revenue unless we sit down in committee, talk about where these monies can come from, and make it fair and equitable. Thank you.
Mr. Roy?
I think the biggest challenge facing many communities goes back to education funding. We talked at the very beginning that most communities spend 60 to 65% of their budgets on education. Education is the primary function of the local community. Since the 1700s, we've left it to our local communities to educate our children, and that's the proper role for a local community. But at the same time, it's a constitutional obligation of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to provide education. So I think the state needs to lower the burden on our local communities by increasing education funding. If we could get increased education funding from the state, that would be a tremendous relief on the local property tax burden. There are some states in the United States that do not fund education through local property tax dollars. We should be visiting a better way to fund education, and I think that would be the beginning of tax relief for local communities. And another way to help out local tax dollars, and goes back to the senior circuit breaker tax credit. We need to get the word out to seniors who are facing a critical tax bill. This funding, this program is available to give seniors tax relief if their property tax dollars exceed 10% of their income. Those are two great ways to relieve the local tax burden. Thank you.
And we're back to Mr. Marcus for questions.
Massachusetts recently had a tax-free weekend. Do you feel that's fiscally responsible, and would you support it in the future?
Mr. Roy?
I have to say, it may be something that's attractive to people who want a bargain, but from a fiscal standpoint, I can't agree with a tax-free weekend. It just doesn't measure up. The return is not there. One thing that we constantly bellyache about is the fact that we don't have enough revenues to support our budgets. I hear that time and time again. We're falling short of revenues. And what do we do in the face of falling revenues? We offer a weekend where we lose millions of dollars because we don't collect sales tax. And I have not yet seen a study that convinces me that having this sales tax-free weekend has resulted in any great economic boon to the citizens of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I don't know that it's increased sales, and I just don't think it helps us in the long run. I think it just puts us further in the hole, and I don't think that's good fiscal and responsible policy. Thank you.
Mr. Padula?
It seems like these questions are loaded because this was asked to me by Frank Falvey, who his way of asking the question was, this sales tax thing is a horrible thing. What do you think about it? And my response was, my wife wants a new refrigerator, so I think I better agree to it. Having said that, the state has a balanced budget. From the people that I talk to and going around, they seem to like it. You know, I haven't seen any studies that say our budget's not going to be balanced because we have a tax-free weekend. It's good for people that want to spend and buy items, big-ticket items, up to $2,500. There's caps on these things as well. And I think that local businesses really seem to like it. So based on the response and what I'm hearing from people, I think it's actually a pretty good idea. So unless I see some data to the contrary, I would be in support of it. And we did, in fact, buy a refrigerator over that weekend, too. Thank you.
Hopefully your decisions on who to vote for won't turn on pro or con on the sales tax. Mr. Sherlock?
I think it's been mentioned earlier today as well, but local officials often complain to voters that costly state mandates tie their hands and prevent them from making common sense fiscal policies for the town. What would you do as a state rep to remove the burdensome state mandates and untie the local officials' hands?
Mr. Padula.
You know, first thing I would do is work with local officials and identify the specific problems that they're having and try to come up with some possible solutions. And then we work with the legislature. Before mandates get put in place, we want to make sure that they're funded properly. In Franklin, my son's on the anti-bullying committee. Well, and meeting with the town officials, I hear that they put this mandate in place, but they didn't fund it. So our principal seems to be doing a lot of extra work himself, and there's no funds to cover that. So I think that if you're going to do this, you've got to make sure you're doing it right. You need to review the programs and make, even though they may be well-intentioned, make sure they consider any additional problems that they may carry with them when you put them into place. Thank you.
And Mr. Roy, to you.
Well, I can tell you, having served on the school committee and the town council, this was one of the most frustrating aspects of public service, is trying to implement a mandate from the legislature that simply did not come with any funding. Let me read off a few of them that we had to deal with. BMI indexing, junk food bans, sterilization of all school banned instruments, no child left behind reporting requirements, the anti-bullying program, and most recently there was a requirement for reporting and education programs for children that were suspended or expelled from school. These are all laudable goals, and I understand what was behind them. But when you send legislation like this to a local community that's already overtaxed and overburdened, and you don't provide a source of funding, you're forcing that community to make a decision about other programs that they'd have to cut to implement that. What I would suggest that before we send any bill out for the governor's signature, that we send it to the auditor's office, let's make use of that office, have them do an analysis of the bill and the costs that will be levied on any community that has to implement this legislation, and provide a source of funding before we enact it. That's the only reasonable thing to do, that's the only responsible thing to do, and that's what I would urge my colleagues in the legislature to do. Thank you.
And Mr. LeBlanc, to you.
This has all been just too easy. If
It's easy for
either of
you.
you were elected, would you file legislation to exempt those 75 years and over from the income and property taxes?
Well, there's a bomb. Jeff, to you.
Well, let me take a look at the audience before I answer this question.
Now, see, that's just what's wrong with politics.
I don't know if
You know-
Frank Falvey's coaching, then you've got your answer down there.
Well, let me tell you this. I, like anybody else in this room, don't like to pay taxes. But taxes are the price that we pay to live in a civilized society. And we all have to pay taxes. And we all have to pay our fair share. It's part of our responsibility to one another. I wouldn't give exemptions to anyone, but I would certainly provide ways that we are not overburdening any particular group in society, and those who can't afford to pay taxes, we have programs in place to provide them with relief. We have earned income tax credits. We have senior circuit breaker tax credits. We have a number of programs in place that help those folks. All I'm asking is that we all pay our fair share and contribute to the society and the civilization that we want. And I don't think I could ask for any more than fairness for everybody at all levels of the spectrum. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Padula, you've had some time to give this some thought. Your answer?
Yeah, these questions seem to be getting easier and easier. Of course, if I could guarantee for votes of all the people over 75, I'd move that bill. But I don't know that we could do that. Having said that, I would certainly consider it. I think that, having said that, people, as we get older, and as my uncles and all my family starts to retire, they do expect to have taxes to pay. So while I don't want to be 75 and be on a fixed income and know I have to pay more money for my medication and have my taxes go up, I know there's a certain level of expectation that's there. Having said that, I had a friend of mine recently whose parents had to sell their home because their property taxes went up so high. In one of our neighboring communities, they sold their house to buy in Franklin. That's a problem. You know, that needs to be addressed. So I'll tell you what, I'd certainly be willing to sit down and talk about this issue. Just like the gentleman, Mr. Caravaggio at the senior center said, why should my taxes keep going up every year? You know, I don't know the answer to that, but I tell you, I think it's something, these are the kind of problems that we hear when we talk to people, the bread and butter problems that we need to address. You know, no lip service. Let's sit down and talk about it. These people, if it's something that's not realistic, they need to know that that's not realistic and they need to plan for it accordingly. But if it's something we can do for them, let's do it. Let's do it and let's help them. Thank you.
I understand that this will be the last question. Okay, and so we'll go back to Mr. Marcus for the final question.
Another topic that is talked about a lot are the costs of health care. Do you think Governor Patrick has done enough to bring down health care costs? And what would you propose to do to contain health care costs?
Here's an easy one for you, Peter.
What a lob that one was, too. You know, healthcare, three things that we have to be concerned about with regard to healthcare: quality, accessibility, and cost. You know, Massachusetts has led the nation where we have 95% of people who have access to healthcare via Romney Care. And that's great. But you know what? One of the problems we're having is getting costs under control. It's a huge issue. You know, this year the state has enacted some legislation that will go into effect shortly that's trying to hold costs down. Let me tell you something, that's a great start, but that's just what it is, a start. So we're moving in the right direction. My job as a legislator is to make sure we continue to move in that direction, to continue to hold the health insurance companies liable and responsible, to make sure that we're doing this stuff right. Why should it be that you can have a procedure over here in suburbia and go into Boston and pay twice as much money? Because that's what my people on Beacon Hill are telling me that's happening right now. That's not right. We need to continue to work on, as this footing, we should continue to build on the work that started right now by the governor, by this recent legislation, and start to bring this thing under control and bring the costs under control. That will make our accessibility and our quality better. Thank you.
And to you, Mr. Roy.
Well, I'm glad to see that the legislature did tackle, which is one of the most complicated issues, and that's increasing health care costs. Seeing it on the local level, seeing it as a small business person, what health care costs have done to our economy, I think it's high time that we did something about it as a legislature. We need to encourage healthy living for all of our citizens, because that's going to decrease costs. Lower rates for those who exercise regularly, reduce medical errors, find alternative payment methodologies. One thing I've seen in my day job as an attorney is the different methods and the different forms and the different paperwork that's out there. Depending on what insurance company you use, they'll pay one rate if you're using this insurance company, another rate if you're using this insurance company, another rate if you're a private pay. We need to bring all of that paperwork under control. Let's get a uniform way of paying for these bills, and let's all pay the same rate. There's no reason why a private pay patient needs to pay $10,000 for a procedure that an insurance company is paying $3,000. And if you're in the Medicare or Mass Health system, you're paying an even different rate. So these different rates that are out there, we need to bring those under control. And another way is to improve third-party collections on some of these medical bill recoveries. All of these ways are cost containment methods. They're all included in the legislation that was recently passed by the legislature, and it's a good step towards addressing this central problem. Thank you.
We concluded the question portion, and now it's time for candidate closings, and it's in reverse order to where we opened, so I go to Mr. Roy.
Well, thank you very much, and I truly want to thank you all for staying throughout the night. Actually, I see one who's leaving a little early, but have a good night. I'm glad you stayed for the rest of the part. This is, as I said at the beginning, a very important election. It's about the type of government that we want and how we're all going to work together to make Massachusetts a great place to work and to live. Now, I'm overwhelmed by the support that I've received from members of the community in this race. And as I said at the very outset, meeting people, talking to people, and getting their support has truly shown me that getting into this race was the best thing that I could have done. I am tired. I'm exhausted, quite frankly. But I tell you, I have never enjoyed myself more than campaigning in this community and in the community of Franklin and working with you folks. And I can't think of a better outcome than to be the next state representative. I'm pleased to have the endorsement of Congressman Jim McGovern in this race. Many town leaders, fellow town councilors, many school committee members, endorsements from neighbors, endorsements from institutions, and fellow citizens in both the communities of Franklin and Medway. Some wrote some of the greatest letters that I could ask for. And I urge you, go to my website, look at the endorsements page, look at some of the things that people have said about this campaign, and I hope you'll come away with the same feeling. This support and this enthusiasm has really fueled this campaign for me. But why I'm in this race, I want to tell you a story about a parent who came up to me a few weeks ago, and it really exemplifies for me why I'm in this race and why I want to win this race. When I was on the school committee, one of the things I'm most proud of was the establishment of the Franklin Arts Academy, which was a program that was put in place for those students who didn't necessarily like going to school. They weren't getting enough out of the current curriculum. They were looking for something different. So 2 teachers at the Franklin High School said, we want to come up with a program that allows them to use their creativity, their theatrical art, their painting, drawing, whatever, or music. They want to join this program and encourage their abilities. So we established this Franklin Arts Academy. And I ran into a mother in a random visit a few weeks ago, and she told me, my son was going to be a dropout. He was heading down a dangerous path. That program changed his life. He's now enthusiastic about getting up in the morning. He loves to go to school, and he's enjoying every moment of it. That's why I got involved in government, to provide the opportunities for people to improve their lives. And that's why I'm running in this race, and that's why I'm asking for your vote on Thursday, September 6th. Thank you very much.
And finally, Mr. Padula, you've got the final say.
Thank you, Mr. Serrell. You know, if you think me being involved on the Franklin Charter Commission and learning about the forms of government, appointed positions versus elective, and how it works, then you vote for me as your next state representative. If you think that my experience on the Norfolk County Advisory Board, learning about other cities and towns' problems they have with their town administrators and their OPEB and their collective bargaining, if you think that that experience would make me the better candidate, then vote for me. If you think that being a special assistant district attorney and prosecuting cases for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts makes me the best candidate, then vote for me. If you think being on the transition team for Michael Morrissey, the district attorney from Norfolk County, and have an input on the people that prosecute cases for Medway and Franklin, then vote for me. If you think that coaching for 13 years in Franklin, kids in the teams, soccer, basketball, baseball, if you think that makes me the better candidate or the best candidate against my immediate opponent and all the opponents in the race, I ask that you vote for me. If you think that being a local businessman for 22 years practicing law in Franklin and 28 years with my insurance agency serving Franklin and Medway and the surrounding communities makes me a better candidate, then vote for me. You know, I talked to Jim Valley, spoke to him last week Thursday, and throughout the race he's talked to Jeff and I. We both mentioned that. We're going to make sure we get that in, you know. And he said to me, and I know Jeff and I both get it in on a regular basis, but he said to me a couple things. Don't pander, okay? Don't pander. Be yourself, and don't overpromise. Well, before I get to the promising piece, I want to make sure I mention my kids, Bradley and Peter, who are in the crowd. Thank you, Peter, and Bradley's here. And my son Daniel's lifting for football. He's got football practice tonight. And also want to call people's attention to our website, as our website gets up for the people at home, not for you people here because you know, but the people at home watching this, watch our website. But the last thing Jimmy said was, don't overpromise. Well, let me make you 3 promises. Number 1, no one, and I mean no one, will outwork me on behalf of the people here for you on Beacon Hill. That's number 1. Number 2, no one with my local office, when I'm not in Boston, I'm in Franklin, close to Medway, right here. No one will be more accessible than me. And no one, and I mean no one, will take better care of you than I will on Beacon Hill. You know, I'm asking for your vote. On September 6th, vote Peter Padula, and I'll make you proud that you did. Thank you. God bless and good night.
This concludes the program. I'd like to thank both candidates for their time and effort and commitment. I'd like to thank you for attending. I'd like to thank those at home for watching. And I want to encourage all of you to turn out and vote. Vote your conscience. Vote for whoever you think is the better person, but vote on September 6th. Thank you.